I looked at the program when I got it yesterday. I opened it up. I'm sure you all got one, everybody. So I looked and it was like, oh, look, at 1 o'clock, how to modernize the federal government, Brad Wintermute. Well, it's gonna take a little longer than an hour for that. So we're gonna focus on the FDA and what we're doing there so that you can kind of understand some of the challenges from inside of the government, but also how we're actually taking on that challenge head on. And I think really have a good story to tell, and hopefully have a really good story to tell in a couple years. So I'm the Deputy CIO. We already did the introduction. So I want to talk about the FDA so you can kind of understand my environment and what I've got to deal with on, say, a daily basis. But the FDA is really a science-based regulatory agency. So we have to regulate a variety of products. It's not just the food and the drugs, but there are other things that we handle. We are basically responsible for all food except for meat that's done by USDA. There's that whole thing about the chicken. We don't deal with the chicken, but the egg we do deal with because that's a packaged food product, so it's a little different, right? So then if you look at drugs, you've got a variety of drugs that we have to handle. Also, tobacco product, there was a tobacco law passed in 2010 that has the FDA regulating tobacco products. And there was a recent update, I believe, on vaping. It's a partial situation where we're going to be regulating some of the vape stuff. Along with that, we also do the medical devices and radiological things. So like your microwave at home, because it's got radiation emitting capability, we measure that to make sure that it's safe and it's not cooking you, it's cooking your food. So in order to do that, the FDA is organized into business units, and I may slip here and say the word center. That would be like a business center. So just in case my lingo goes through, that's our business units. There's about 9 different business units within the FDA. We have offices here in DC is our headquarters, and then we have about 350 locations across the United States, and then a bunch around the world. So when we look at a global perspective, and that's why I've got the time zone map up there, we literally are 24/7. The sun does not go down in the FDA. That means our systems have to support the business because our IT systems are there basically so the business can get done. And there's about 22,000 people at the FDA that rely every minute of every day on something that I'm responsible for. And so how do I deal with that to make sure that we have the high availability that's necessary to get the job done, and the performance and all that kind of stuff? And so that's a little bit of what I want to talk about. We regulate about 25% of GDP. So you think about that. We just got back from lunch. Everybody feel good? Hopefully you're not going to go to sleep on me, so I'll try to. So what you ate, you better hope that our guys were doing a good job, right? Because otherwise, might be not a good afternoon. And so when you start looking at what we handle and what we cover, it really affects every United States, based person on a daily basis, and quite honestly, it affects people around the globe because we're such a leader. So if you look at the European market, they're going to look for a drug that's approved at the FDA more acceptance than if it wasn't, right? So we're affecting things. We're setting policy that affects pesticide use in rice that's being grown in Asia. If it wants to be shipped into the United States, it's got to be at a certain level of pesticide use, residue on the rice. So lots of stuff going on there to kind of give you an idea. So from a workload perspective, so I've got that complexity, 9 different business units doing everything from drugs to, actually I didn't mention the animal food, veterinary medicine. So veterinary medicine and dog food. An interesting anecdote there is if we have a recall on food, if it's a food product that has a problem, we will have a bigger reaction if it's a dog food than if it's a human food. There's a bigger, whole society will react stronger if it's a pet product, which is pretty interesting. When you look at our workload, we have a tremendous increase from the last several years in a couple different areas that I'm going to focus on. When electronic submissions came about, there's been some legislation that was passed in kind of the late 90s, early 2000s, on submitting things electronically to the FDA to help us be more efficient in how we go about processing and evaluating things. So if you're a pharma company and you're creating a new drug, you're going to have to submit that drug to the FDA before you can go to market to prove it's efficient and it's effective and it's safe. And you're going to provide a lot of documentation, clinical trial documents, the actual structure, the composition of the product itself, where all those components are manufactured, et cetera. And you're going to submit that into the FDA. In days long ago, thankfully, not that long probably, but at least 10 years ago, there used to be semi-trailers that would back up to the FDA for one drug. There would be multiple semi-trailers where we would use forklifts to pull the paper off. And that's what we went through. We had to go through all of that paper. Today, that all gets shipped in electronically. Well over 90% of all the information coming into the FDA is done via electronic means, which is really great because it gets it in. It puts more burden on the IT group, though, right? Because now I'm the Postal Service, too, right? So it used to be you had to worry about the freight company, and now it's coming through us. There's also been an increase in actual activity. There's things like medical devices. So every medical device that is manufactured now has to have a unique identifier to the device, to the hip implant. That has to get registered with the FDA. Part of that process comes through an electronic measurement. We also have all the firms. So if you're manufacturing food or drugs, you're gonna register with the FDA where those manufacturing facilities are so that we can trace down where something came from. So that if we have a problem, we can go find it, right? And where does it come from? That sounds really simple, but when you start looking at the complexity that puts on us being able to make sure that we can coordinate all the data and the manufacturers, it's quite a daunting task. I'm told about 80% of the compounds used in drugs that are either made here or consumed here in the United States are not, the components are not made in the United States, they're imported in. So you've got a supply chain that's got multifaceted sources coming together here, and if there's a problem, we've got to be able to go back to find out what the source of the problem is. So there's a lot of challenge to that. Of course, that's where the IT systems and the data analytics come into play. If you look at our import volumes, what we're faced with at the FDA, we basically review or clear imports coming in if it's food, drug, medical devices, tobacco products. So when that comes in, that customs gets it, they go, oh, hey, this is something for the FDA. They send it over, they send a record over for us to look at. We take a look at that record and then we go and do an inspection on that import. Like for instance, cheese, we do 100% sample. So if you're getting the imported cheese, you should feel safe. We're checking it. We check every one of those we sample out to make sure that it's safe and then comes through. If it's good, if not, we'll turn it away. We basically interact with customs on a real-time basis to allow that import to come in. So if something happens to my system, I had the guy who runs our import center. So we have basically a center that's staffed 24/7 that focuses on doing these reviews. And he said, if the system goes down, you've got to basically tell your guy who's in the data center when he's looking at the little box, if he unplugs the box, it stops imports. And he needs to understand the downstream effect, right? So he's like, and then I get all of my phones light up, everybody calling me, why can't I come across the border? So we have this connection back through all the way to the dock, if you will. And if you look at the import volume, it was about 7 million or so per year, 7 million lines, whatever it is, per year. We're running about 35 million now. So since 2002, we've gone up 5-fold. It's almost a hockey stick, not quite there on this graph, but it's certainly an increase. So more and more things are being imported into the United States, and we see that in our personal life. I mean, recently I wanted to do a new entertainment center, which I'll probably elaborate on when we get a little bit farther down. But I wanted to put shelving on the wall that was this floating shelf stuff that basically doesn't have a support. You've probably seen it walking around. And I started looking for brackets and I couldn't find them anywhere. So I went on to eBay and said, hey, well, they're really popular in Europe and Australia. And so I was able to find lots of different sites, picked one and said, hey, free shipping even, send it to me. I bought it from Hong Kong and it got shipped in, and I'm sure everyone in here has probably done something similar. Well, we're doing that with, with vitamins and other things that come into the country, and the FDA has to look at that. So that kind of change in culture, I guess a shrinking, if you will, size of the world is really making it more dynamic on what we're having to regulate and what we're seeing. So if you are buying the vitamins from internet, I don't know, you might want to double check that. It's interesting to see what we find. So anyway, this is an issue where we've got to make sure that our systems can keep up to this because of this increased workflow or workload. We seem to be ever expanding on our servers, and so I'm going to talk later about what's our trajectory forward. But keep in mind the complexity of the organization and an increasing workload, which is the first two slides. So about a year ago, I got a new boss. So Todd Simpson is our new CIO. The FDA, if you read in the newspapers, has had a variety of CIOs over the last several years. I actually came into the organization as a contractor helping with a modernization program in 2009. So in 2007, the Congressional Science Board released a study, or the results of a study, that looked at the IT systems at the FDA and recommended some changes. There were a lot of things that were old, and I'm going to talk about a little bit of what I saw then and what we have today. But Dr. Rob Califf is recently appointed as the current commissioner. He's been on the job for about 2 months now. I was just in a meeting with him really 2 days ago. And what he said was, he was part of that science board analysis team in 2007. And our IT systems now, compared to 2007, is like night and day. That's a quote. Much better now. We're really in pretty good shape. But Todd's been brought in to say, okay, how do you go to the next level? All right, we're kind of here, which we're really good, it's good, but the technology that we're using is maybe 5 years old. And because of the rapid pace and change of technology, it's ancient. And it's like, it's not ancient, but it's ancient. So how do we really take advantage of some of the new things, like the Appian things that we've seen downstairs today, and other opportunities in the marketplace? So Todd came in, he said, look, we need to put together a strategic plan, really understand where we need to go, put it together in a form factor that's got tactical milestones to it so that we can click them off and really make sure that we're getting where we need to be, because things are changing so fast. We've got to start changing with it and take advantage of that technology change. This is available publicly on our website. If you go to fda.gov, there's an actual link there, but I think you have to search for IT strategic plan. If you look for just strategic plan, you'll get the FDA's strategic vision and plan. And so anyway, this plan looks at our basic mission. So I'm in the Office of Information Management and Technology. That's that OIMT at the top. And we really want to be an effective, fiscally responsible technology provider, right? Vision is to be really the model of a successful IT organization. All this is really supported by 3 pillars. If you look at our quality, security, and efficiency, we've got to improve in each one of those areas or maintain where we currently are. Certainly from a customer satisfaction perspective, we're faced with much of the same challenges that other organizations, whether you're federal or not. In a consumer's life, how many here use Waze? Look at that, over half. Thank you. You're helping me on the way home. So keep hitting the thumbs up, or thumbs down when you get speed traps or accidents, all these things. It's very interesting. The other day, there was some object in the road, and I was like, okay. So I'm looking for it. I go, it's this little tiny thing. I'm like, really? Somebody's bored. I mean, like they put the, But what we do in our personal life, what Waze or a variety of other applications do, provide us with information where we can make better decisions. And when we come to work, we want to have that same type of experience. And so there's a challenge between, while my systems work, the systems that my team, if some of them are in the audience here, my team provides into the FDA works effectively today. But it's not that Waze level of effectiveness, right? Our customers want more. So customer satisfaction it's an ever increasing bar, if you will. So how do we improve that We certainly have to improve our delivery. So I do have some stories of things that take way too long to get implemented at the FDA, and there's usually a variety of reasons for that. And then in order to do this, we've got to improve our skill set of our staff. Security, we're saying increase security. We're already pretty secure. So if you want to think about the FDA and what we do, we hold the ingredients to patented drugs, in many cases, or in a lot of cases, all cases, pre-market, and then of course post-market, because once it's on the market, we're continually getting adverse event report type information in. So that's even sensitive because we don't want to create panic. If there's an adverse event going on until we really identify what the cause is, there's some issues. But we are a ripe target, or at least a target, whether we're ripe or not. We're a target of a lot of organizations, or a lot of non-organizations, a lot of anonymous organizations around the world, right? They want in to get that data, if not just for a trophy, to actually be able to use it for some kind of competitive advantage. So you imagine, not that Pfizer would do that, I shouldn't use words like that, I guess, but if Pfizer got Merck's data, that'd be bad, right? So we don't want that to happen. So security is certainly important, and it's got to be top of mind for us, because we are entrusted with the public trust, and then also our sponsors, the industry, is trusting us to keep that data. I mean, some of this pre-market work they're trying to get to market has cost them over $1 billion and taken maybe a decade, and they're having to turn in all of that information to the FDA. I've got to keep that secure. And of course, we need to be efficient, right? And at the bottom of that is improve the utilization of technology. So there's all this technology, like I talk about ways. How do we do that inside the FDA to make sure that we're really utilizing that to the best of our ability? So we broke this into people, process, and technology. Everybody's heard that before, right? So some of the things inside, we looked at the people, making sure that we had the organization itself organized properly. That's what the role alignment's about, is to make sure that we have people doing things that they need to do and that they're skilled at. AD CIO is our Associate Deputy CIO. So each one of our business units has kind of an IT leader in it that's a business leader. So they're looking at it from the business side to say, okay, how is IT helping me meet my business mission? And they provide that feedback through our CIO council. So we basically have the CIO who chairs a council with the AD CIOs that are providing input so that we can understand how are we doing for meeting the business mission, because the IT is there, again, to meet the business mission. Processes, we've really opened up the transparency. We've done that really throughout the last 5 years or so. It just seems to be an accelerated thing. Recently, a lot of that helps because then when our customers are concerned about something, like why is this taking so long, if they understand more of the drivers of that, it's beneficial. Certainly trying to focus on governance models so that we can, again, be systematic. So a lot of what you're here with business process management, right? Business processes that have repeatable processes, how do we get that put into play across the spectrum? And that's part of the challenge. And then from a technology perspective, we want to make sure that we're stabilizing what we currently have and modernizing it. So we had a big push in 2009 and 10, basically on the heels of that Congressional Science Board study, to modernize the data center. Well, it's 2016, some of that stuff's getting old. We've basically refreshed from a server perspective and storage in the last couple years to where it's fairly new. But now, if you look another 5 years, that's going to be old. Where do I really want to be? Because I don't want to be in the business, quite honestly, I don't want to be in the business of buying those things again. I was hoping this was the last time I bought servers. So we'll see. And then from a data perspective, we've got a vast amount of data. Many of that is siloed within those business units, right? So this is the drug group had it for the drugs and the food group had it for the food. How do we use that across the organization to make better business decisions? It really is the question. So we're looking at from a technology perspective, we've implemented a choose your own device. Basically, just got this off the ground here in April. It went live, where we're able to actually use something that everybody would be familiar with, an iPhone or an Android device to get email. How many people in here are using a BlackBerry for email? Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. All right, so the people that work for the FDA, put your hand down. That's half the group, right? So 98% of our mobile devices are BlackBerries today. We're rolling out different choices across the organization. It took us a while to get here. We had to make sure it was secure. We had to make sure we could have remote management and all those things. And then we had to look at how do we train the end users. We also were very concerned with BlackBerry. It's been a fantastic platform for us, but as many people are concerned, like, is it going to survive or not? They should have owned this market, but they didn't react. They didn't adjust fast enough when the iPhone came on the scene, and hence, there you go. We want to make sure we don't run into that same problem ourselves. Number one, we don't want to be here at risk at being stuck with a BlackBerry, but I also don't want to be a BlackBerry. So I'm trying to get the IT organization to modernize with the times also. So this would, the goal here is having a mobile workforce anytime, anywhere, any device. And so provide a variety of devices, whether it be a phone or a tablet, to help the person get the work done. So in the pictures, we're seeing inspectors, right? So we've got inspectors that are going out and they're in a warehouse. They're doing a lot of work on paper. They were up to very recently. Getting them onto tablets is so much more efficient. They could take a picture of the case. This is what it looks like, and then when they're taking samples out, they can take another picture. You've got geocoding so that you can see that that's exactly where it was. It was this particular space. Allowing that to happen is really important. There's some challenges though, because sometimes they're inside of a shipping container or in a remote location that doesn't have signal, or like this room. I think so. If you're on T-Mobile, you don't have signal in here. I know my phone's not working, but we've got to be able to have them continue to do their work offline, and then be able to, when they come back in, get signal, get it connected back up. It's certainly critical to what we're doing from an organization perspective. So we put together a roadmap from a mobility perspective where we're starting with just, hey, how do we build applications? We have very few mobile apps in the environment today, but we really want to get to where we're using that across the board. We have folks that are like medical safety officers. So we have people basically in a nutshell that are tied to a particular drug or a set of drugs. So for an example, I'll just say you're tied to Tylenol. Your mission is Tylenol adverse events. And so you're looking on a daily basis at problems related to Tylenol. People take Tylenol, they have a problem, they report it to us, or they report it to the pharmacy or the pharmaceutical company that gets reported back into us. And we tie that together. Well, sometimes it's bad things are happening, okay? So people are dying. And so every day, X number of people die. The medical safety officer is trying to solve the riddle. They're using all the tools at their availability to go through data analytics, whatever, to solve that riddle faster, because every day more people die. Once they solve the riddle, got it, get the notice out, don't drink Coke with Tylenol, whatever it was causing the death, right? Once that riddle got solved, that medical safety officer has a big relief. But up to that point, internally to them, it's a very hard job. I mean, it's like it's daunting on them. So how do we get that into their hands, maybe a mobile device at home where they get alert a little faster? Hey, we're seeing a trend, an uptick in problems. What do you want to do? Maybe they can do some analytics before they got to the office to fix that problem faster, identify that riddle. So there's some real benefits to mobile other than just mobile. We look at cloud. I think hopefully people have seen this from enterprise IT, which is where heavily the FDA is today, is on the left side of this. And then get into infrastructure as a service. We do have some infrastructure as a service where we use like Amazon or some other providers like that, where basically the customer's managing less and you're letting the provider manage more. So the gray is where the provider is managing the systems or the pieces of the system. Platform as a service. Much like Appian, what we consider, and I'm not sure what he's going to say, but what we consider is a platform as a service where we're just dealing with the application and they're dealing with a lot of the other stuff. And then software as a service is a variety of softwares out there, maybe a time card system, that kind of stuff. Email as a service would fall into software as a service. So today, and in the recent past, when we want a new system created in our world, we would have instantly thought of the left side of this and said, okay, what do we have? How can we put it into our environment? Because what we're trying to do through the strategic plan is get building blocks put in put in place, and a change in governance and philosophy that says, let's start from the left side. Is there something out there like, software as a service? And if there's not a software as a service, is there a platform that we can use? And hopefully we get stopped right there. And if not, then keep going down to where we actually have to build it and put it on premise. And so that's really kind of what this was about, is just focus on, how can we use this technology that's out there in the marketplace to get the delivery done, and then not have all of that refresh that's going to happen every 5 years or so in our environment. I'm in the business of making sure that my customers meet their mission, but they're in the food and drug, medical device, and tobacco regulation business, not in the IT business. And so I'm trying to offload those things and keep what's important to us, which, to me is the sweet spot is either software or platform as a service. So that's the end of my presentation. I think you were going to have some questions, or we can open it up to the audience for questions.
Yeah, thank you. That's excellent. First of all, I wanted to find out where I sign up to be part of that 100% cheese testing.
Mm-hmm. It's not as glamorous as it sounds.
I would not think.
It's a cold warehouse in New York City. Anyway.
Thank you. So I heard a lot of different things. You talked about having 3 pillars that you're taking a look at that kind of stand everything up. You've talked about refresh rates really shrinking, and how technology is aging much more fast than it did in the past. And being able to bring agility and the work to anytime, any place across the board. You had mentioned earlier the strategic plan that you have, the 15 through 18 that you and Todd developed. And Todd used one of my new favorite terms that in another event where we were both at. And he talked about the previous strategic plan being really thick. And he said it had great thump factor, so you could thump it onto the desk. But this one we were talking about, and you said it's much slimmer. Why is that, and how do you take a plan and prioritize and focus on the implementation so that you take strides forward and it just doesn't become shelfware?
Yeah, so our previous strategic plan was from, I think the time period was like a 2012 to 16 or 17, maybe it was a 5-year plan. And it was a very thick document that was really shelfware. And so, it had some good tenets like move to cloud, but it was like that, move to cloud. Who here doesn't want to move to cloud, right? But how are we going to do that? And so the new plan, when Todd came in, said, all right, look, we need a strategic plan. What do we need to fix in the organization? We looked at the people, process, technology, but then each one of those is broken down. And so even though it's a strategic plan, we have very tactical milestones that are due with dates, of, okay, where are we at? So we can focus and make sure that we have a team. I've got a variety of teams that are my organization focused on specific, like individual milestones to execute on those milestones. Now we actually have a roadmap to get there. So instead of just dreaming, we can actually start clicking them off and complete the things that are necessary to move us forward, which is important.
So another question, just knowing FDA, you talked about the multiple centers kind of across the board. I'm going a little bit off script here, but I'm curious because laying out this plan is excellent. I love hearing tactical. Let's get things done. Let's make progress and show it. How has it been received organizationally? What are some of the challenges that you've had when you have a very diverse centers that are doing very discrete things and trying to tie together and bring a large organization forward? What have you seen, and what are you trying to employ in order to be successful?
So, I think our biggest challenge is organizational change management. So I'm sure a lot of folks have the same situation in their organization. I'm from the state of Missouri. It's the show me state, so I don't believe anything unless you show me. It seems like every one of my customers in these business units are in the same, they must all think they grew up in Missouri. because they're not going to take our word for it. We're going to have to demonstrate that we can actually change and move the ball forward and give them something that they've not seen before, right? So the talk is cheap, right? How do we deliver? They've been really receptive and they've been patient and they've been like, yeah, this makes sense. They've got buy-in, but I don't feel the buy-in like they're not coming to hug me, right? So I want some more hugs.
Soon.
So I think it's really about showing and demonstrating that we can get off the ground. It's interesting because we have a little off subject too, but we have a milestone that was due just in April. We delivered it. It's application development standards. And so it talks about using Agile and et cetera. There's specific coding languages that we would use, kind of lays it out. And so we had a group of people participating in that from all the different centers, all the business centers, right? And they all were like, yeah, gung-ho and all this kind of stuff. And so we put it into the document, and it's not even much thicker than this, right? Yeah. And we said, here. And now it was written down. Don't know about that, right? Because now it's actually in writing. So now, we need to review this. And so they need like a month to review it, and they're going through it. But I could see this resistance. And it was interesting because when we were talking about, we're going to use Git as our repository, and Jira, and things that, Jenkins for continuous integration, and DevOps, and deployment using Puppet. And they're like, yeah, that's great. And then once I wrote it down, they were like, uh-oh. He's serious, right? So it's a matter, I think, of getting buy-in and then really demonstrating how that's going to benefit them in their everyday life.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So I'll do one last one, and then I think I'll leave just a couple minutes if others want to ask questions. What's your vision? You're saying technology, before it was 5 years ago, it's not that long ago, but now it seems there's this vast delta of what modern technology looks like. How soon do you see this transition from the left-hand side, which is where most federal agencies are still, as much talk as we've had with the cloud? We're seeing that progression slowly off to that side. When do you get that bow wave so the weight of the page is towards the right?
Yeah, so I really see, this would be my personal opinion, not an FDA opinion, but my personal opinion is that we're seeing a change this year. This is the year. 2016 is a shift in the cloud providers, Amazon, Appian, a variety of folks that have gone through the FedRAMP process. They went through FedRAMP, which is the federal requirement on the security, and then, okay, great, yada, yada. What we're seeing is that they're actually, the control and the automation and the consistency that they have in those environments are better than what we're able to do internally, or at least equivalent to what we're doing internally. And I think that it's starting to get to the where, and there's so much investment going into, I use Amazon as an example, so much into Amazon or Google, into their infrastructure in the back office, and I know you guys run some on one of those platforms, that how do you keep up with $1 billion a quarter going into their data centers? I can't spend $1 billion a quarter, okay? So that is making them more secure, and our security officers, our chief information security officers, CISOs are starting to see that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, okay, I can see how this is actually, and I think this is the year where we switch over. That's the key, right?
Yeah.
Once we get to where, remember security, I mean, it's really important for us for a variety of reasons. That then will really open the door. We have some stuff on platform. We have some stuff on software as a service, but it's a small piece. In order to get here, it's still multi-years out. But we're seeing a movement that way, and I think I think 5 years from now we'll say this was the pivotal year.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, we've seen that as well on the vendor side, where you see the CISOs realizing we're doing more here, updating patches, security, all the various components, so that it's more secure than you can roll out in your own data center.
That's right.
And that it's that moment of allowing the organizations to say that's not the barrier anymore. The barrier is now the change management and having the vision to take the steps forward to have success, which brings people back in and saying, yes, you can help me, you can help deliver, and thus the modernization gets that snowball rolling down the hill.
Exactly.
That's great. Thank you very much. So let me open it up. We've got 4 minutes here. If there are any further questions, I think we've got a mic to the back here, or you can just speak up.
My question on tech refresh modernization dollars. you have a separate line item every 3 to 5 years for refreshing equipment? How did you do that this time?
Yeah, so question was technical refresh. How do we do that from a dollar perspective? We have a separate line item that allows us to do that every 3 to 5 years, et cetera. So the answer is no. We didn't have a separate line, and so really the part of what we've put in place in the last couple of years is a cost allocation model, which is really a pay as you go, pay for your amount of use, and pay per use, if you will. It's not per use, but it's your percentage of use. So the 9 business units all get a dollar charge to them based on how big a footprint they have in the environment. That is allowing us to then build in some technical refresh dollars. So traditionally, we had not done that and would typically just use creative advantage of end of the year dollars that might come through with sweeps or what have you to be able to do that, which is a challenge. And another reason where if we can get more on the right side of this to try to limit that, because now I'm more predictable on my budget versus trying to guess what's it going to cost me to do a technical refresh 5 years from now when I just put all this storage in now. So
Good question.
other questions? Ah, yes.
On the other side, we own the system, and there's no way to kind of shut it down. But on this side, we are vulnerable to potential budgetary.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting. Sorry, so I'll repeat that. I'll try to shorten it up a little bit there. But okay, from a budget perspective, if you go to the right here and you're paying on an annual basis, or let's say you're buying a subscription model, you've got your critical systems in there in the future. So we're 5 years in the future. I got all my critical stuff over there in the last 2. I'm all good, and I've got that on a recurring basis. Now, what happens if a government shutdown or I don't get appropriated dollars? What's going to happen to those systems, right? Because they're going to go poof. They're going to stop working. Whereas if they were on the left side, we could let them roll. So when we had the government shutdown in 2013, was it 13? The fall of 13, we had, of course, all of our stuff in the data center, all right, and our on-prem stuff, and it just kept going. So it would just keep going unless something broke, right? And we had a contingent of people that we were able to keep on that were critical. Certainly for life and death, we had to have folks on to make sure that things would keep running. In our particular case, we may be unique. We have some user fee, which is not a lot of the organization, but a significant amount of user fee dollars. So our groups that were funded by user fees, they kept working during that government shutdown. And so I needed to be able to keep it up and running. So in your example, if I were completely on software as a service and that had to be shut down, then even those folks that were able to work on user fee wouldn't have access to email and that kind of stuff. So certainly a challenge. I see it as a challenge also from a contractual perspective. So and it is a little concerning to me. If I convince my business, remember the show me, right? I convince them to go into a cloud model and they're doing their work. I've got to be able to give them assurance that they're going to continue to do that in the future. So I've got to have a contracting mechanism that allows me some runway before I'd have to recompete that to where they might have to have some kind of disruption in their business. So it's certainly a challenge, not only from a sequestration or that kind of thing, but also just from a normal government procurement process, which I think we're going to have to do something slightly different. Maybe, how do we pay for lights, right? I mean, we pay for the electricity to turn the light on. We need to get to that on the IT side, and the procurement shop's not there yet. So.
All right. I think that wraps up our time. We'll stick around here just for a quick minute, too, if there are further discussion points. But I'd like to thank Brad very much. That was excellent. Appreciate you coming out.